General Michael Flynn's military career included a key role in shaping U.S. counterterrorism strategy and dismantling insurgent networks in the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. He was given numerous combat arms, conventional, and special operations senior intelligence assignments. He became the 18th Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency in July 2012. And he was the 24th U.S. National Security Advisor for the Trump administration. You want intelligence? This guy's got it in spades. This is Inside the SCIF with General Michael Flynn.
Hey everybody, this is General Mike Flynn, and I'm joined today with a great friend, Pastor Steve Cioccolanti. And before we get into some discussions with Steve and to allow him to introduce himself and talk about some of the critical things that I know that he deals with on a daily basis and certainly has been thinking about for a long, long time. And I'll describe here in a second how our relationship developed, because I think it's important to understand that background. I mean, inside the SCIF here with different guests that I do bring on. I think the last one I brought on was Mike Smith to talk about a couple of really critical movies, Out of Shadows and Into the Light, that really, from my perspective, why we believe the kinds of things that we believe. And I will remind people to still go back to watching Out of Shadows, which is, you can get that for free online, Out of Shadows, director Mike Smith. And Into the Light, which is the next sort of phase of his filmmaking debut and career. Anyway, with that, a lot of breaking news this week. I think the most important thing that, from my perspective, is I like to hone in on the issues that are generally national security related, that are impactful to our country. And one of those right now that's unraveling is the situation in the Middle East. And I think that me having Pastor Steve on with me today, we will talk about some of the connections between the biblical connections between what is happening certainly in that part of the world, the Middle East, as well as what is taking place right now here in the United States of America. But for most people that listen to this, maybe by now that we had, I think, at least 3 U.S. service members killed by Iranian rocket attacks, which we are likely paying for. We are paying Israel. We are, we're undermining a bit. We're undermining Israel a bit with the lack of certain types of weapon systems in order for them to defend themselves. That's clear. All of the noise, and I think it's noise, it's tragic noise, but it is noise nonetheless about, the deaths that are happening in places like Gaza. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for the attack on October 7th. So I'm going to remind people, I will continue to remind this audience and remind anybody else that I speak to, that we would not be here had basically the Palestinian Liberation Front, the Hamas, led by the PLO that operates out of Gaza, had they not attacked on the 7th of October in the morning in a very, very brutal attack where they raped, pillaged, murdered babies, children, young girls, young boys, parents in their own homes in some cases, and they took hostages, well over 1,000. We still have a couple of Americans held hostage. I think the numbers is probably about, I've heard 3 or 4. It could be a little bit more than that, but we still have Americans being held hostage. And we definitely have Israelis being held hostage. So this all started, you could say it started, centuries ago, but it clearly started on the 7th of October. And Israel has every right to defend itself. And as this, the problems of what's happening in the Middle East that are clearly impacting all of the Western world, and the other part of what we've just learned is that Russia has agreed with Iran to continue to provide Iran with sophisticated weapon systems sophisticated air defense weapon systems, sophisticated missile defense systems, and offensive missile capabilities that can provide Iran even greater sophistication for their ability to be able to retaliate against Israel in a much, much bigger way. And at a certain point in time, like Mao said, quantity does have a quality all of its own. And if the physical rain of rockets over Israel continues unabated for more than 24 hours, like we've seen, I mean, Iran has already fired, in one volley, 350 missiles into Israel. Israel was able to defend itself quite handily. But if they did it again another day, and they did it again another day in a row, and Hezbollah up on the northern flank out of Lebanon, if Hezbollah, which has tens of thousands of rockets, some are precision guided, as well as the drones that support them, that for fire support and for targeting purposes. If all of these kinds of enemies came together at the same time, Israel would have a really difficult time. And as I have said, and I've said it quite publicly, that this is not about Israel winning a war. This is about Israel surviving. And to be more specific, this is about the state of Israel surviving, because Israel will survive. So with that, that's sort of the physical nature of a very spiritual war that we are involved in. And to a degree, that's why I've got Steve with me, Pastor Steve with me, to talk a little bit about some of these dynamics. So, Steve, if we can, maybe in this first segment, kind of give an overview of your background and what kinds of things you've been involved in.
Well, I've been a pastor in Australia for the past 23, 24 years, and our lives were completely changed. I used to live in the States when 9/11 happened, and from there I started looking at the end time scriptures and prophecy. And as I studied them, it made sense of what's going on, and it actually was even predictive of what's happening. So, for instance, the October 7th war that you talked about, the Lord had me warn the public that we're in a 3.5-year season of war, that it's going to continue, that it wasn't going to be quick with Ukraine, it wasn't going to be quick with Israel. And even one day before that attack, actually, I went on YouTube and I said, it's imminent. It's going to come very soon. So if we put things in a biblical perspective, then we know that actually what we know, first of all, is that we're on the winning side. I think that's important to know. If you're going to go into war, you need to believe that you're on the winning side and your cause is good. So we're on the winning side, but there are some tough times ahead. And when we parse out the scriptures, we're not going to be so confused and so panicky and so fearful. And the scriptures do tell us what's coming next. Iran is not going to win. That's a good thing. But it actually sets us up for some kind of alliance between the Shiites and the Sunnis in the near future. That's what I think is coming.
Yeah, so let's go back to, because a lot of people will look at stuff like this and they'll go, there's people that are they're not non-believers. They're like my middle name is Thomas, right? So I always tell people, there's a reason why my middle name is Thomas, and there's a reason why I got into the world of intelligence, because you want to see bulletproof information, and you not always get it, but you want to have intelligence, and you want to have information that's going to lead you into a place where you're going to make decisions. And I do, and I have been very public about the lack of Israel's preparations along their southern border, primarily with Gaza, when their clear enemy Hamas, where the Israelis were not protecting themselves. They made some very, very terrible decisions in terms of security of their environment. So anyway, looking back, so beforehand, like what are the kinds of things? Because I was with a group of pastors this past week, and we were talking about all these different issues. And I'm not somebody who can quote the Bible or look at things, but when I look at things from the perspective of how does the Bible connect to the wars that we are in or the times that we are facing. And I think that's why when I heard some of what you were talking about really over the last couple of years, when I've listened to some of the things you've said and some of the books that you've written. He's written some good books, and we'll talk about some of these books here in a little bit. What led you to believe that we are coming into a time that we're in now? Like, what caused you to feel that way?
As I said, I think 9/11 was the number one thing. 9/11 was a landmark event. And then the lockdown. The lockdown is described so clearly. What Fauci did to deceive the whole world was a global event that there was no other global event like that since Noah's flood, biblically speaking, something that touched every life, every nation. And so I looked at Revelation 6 and I can see, okay, if this has happened, that means there's a few more things that are coming along the way. There's in fact 22 exact events predicted in the book of Revelation, and we're going through them. So when COVID finished, June 2023 is the place I put the end of COVID. I said, well, then that's the next thing will be, they shall take peace from the earth. That doesn't mean World War III per se, but there will be total unrest all over the world, and we can see it going on even today.
So where do you find this when you say what you said? Revelations, is it Revelations?
Yeah, we can start with Revelation.
Yeah.
So when we go to Revelation, so we want to match. And I'm like
fascinated by this stuff because I grew up as a Catholic kid in the Catholic Church, and we went through the various ecumenical seasons, and I would go to church and I'd listen to the priests, and I would absorb things. I went to a Catholic school as a young kid. This matters to me because I was told quite a few years ago, if you want to find the answers to what's going to happen as an intelligence officer, go back to the only book that was ever written that actually tells the truth, right? It's all about the truth. And that would, of course, be the Bible. So,
yeah. So, I mean, the main thing is, let's not forget the main thing. Jesus is coming back. It's about Jesus, not about America, not even about Israel per se. It's about Jesus is coming back to rule and reign. But because we are so skeptical, we have so many Thomases, God is very gracious to say, well, here's some proof that's undeniable, because humans can't even predict the weather. They couldn't even tell where the hurricane's going to go over. They said we're, going to have to shut down shops and churches and things like that. And then over my area, actually, the hurricane was like nothing came. You can see the map; it was very clear. But anyway, it's very hard to tell the future. That's otherwise people would know, how to bet on every sport game and who's going to win every election. But we have intel here that this one is 2,000 years old. And what I'll show you about the war is 3,000 years old in Ezekiel. So let's start with this. Revelation 6, verse 1. Now I, the apostle John, who was the last surviving apostle out of the 12, I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say, with a voice like thunder, come. And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and his rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So we've got a few different clues, and the Bible does it with clues, because what I learned is this: if you say something too exact, they say it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Somebody was they were bound to make it happen because you said who will attack who on what day.
Right.
So God does it in a clear way, but yet he symbolizes it so that it's not easy to know what it is until it's done. The moment it's done, you say, okay, what is this? Something that's white. So what is universally white around the world? What profession is white? You'll see the medical profession, the pharmaceutical industry, they will wear white. Even when the actors are not real doctors, they have to wear white to show that they're in the medical industry. So somebody is wearing white. The rider had a bow. The word bow in the original Greek is the word toxon, and we get in English the word toxic, intoxicated or toxic. The bow is a weapon system, so the bow means the bow, the arrow, and it's dipped in the toxon to deliver a poison through the skin. So the word is toxon, and then a crown was given to it. That word, if you read in the Latin Vulgate or you read in Spanish, the word is corona. So somebody comes wearing white. He's given a toxon, a delivery system that pierces the skin and gives poison into people. And then a crown, a corona was given to him. What is he going to do with this? He's going to go out conquering and to conquer. That's the first seal. Then you get the second seal. When he opened the second seal, I heard a second living creature say, come. And out came another horse, bright red. And its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that men should slay one another. And he was given a great sword. So we know that right after coronavirus, there's not going to be a time of peace. There's going to be celebration. There's going to be war. And immediately, June 2023, France is usually the telltale, the canary in the coal mine. France is more important than Ukraine, biblically speaking. So as soon as June 2023 came, there was riot over a Muslim boy that was killed. He was a criminal. He's underage, but they still riot. They take every opportunity to riot. They deployed 40,000 police, which I heard that's more than the soldiers we sent to Afghanistan. It was a major, major event. And since then, you can see, even now, you've got riots in France.
So on that, what we're going to do is we're going to go to a break. I'm going to ask Steve to talk a little bit about, when we come back, a little bit about what drove him into this world that he's in right now, and then how can we use the the word right out of the Bible to project what might be occurring here in our country, or certainly globally, when we come back. Okay, so you're in the SCIF with General Mike Flynn. I'm joined today by Pastor Steve Cioccolanti, and we'll be right back.
Sounds rolling. All 3 cameras. We're good.
Is there any regrets that you have in life? I should sit here and say, yeah, I got a lot of regrets. But when I look back on my life and I understand the lives that were lost, I mean, I'm sitting here with you, and I can tell my story.
Former National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, pleaded guilty today for lying to the FBI.
He was one of the most respected generals in the military.
He was, by definition, the most dangerous possible person for Donald Trump to hire.
Brilliant military career, serving 33 years.
Why was he being so elusive?
Mike Flynn told the truth and faced life in prison.
Every American needs this historical DVD keepsake. Flynn delivered the truth, whatever the cost. Hand signed by General Michael Flynn, one of America's most treasured military heroes. Order now at the Patriot TV store. Go to Patriot TV, click on Store, and grab a once-in-a-lifetime chance to own a treasured piece of American history, and get your own personal download link to watch America's most talked-about movie, as well as a DVD hand-signed by General Michael Flynn. Use promo code PTV at checkout to get special savings. The Patriot TV store. Incredible savings and a secure, hassle-free shopping experience. The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
Welcome back to Inside the SCIF. I'm General Mike Flynn. I'm joined today with Pastor Steve Cioccolanti. For those that are joining us now, or for those that were watching in the first segment, we were talking about how to use the Bible to identify the possibilities of what kinds of things we might be facing in the future. And when I look at things as an intelligence professional, I would look at historical patterns, and I would look at current data and try to blend those types of that type of evidence together to make projections about, or estimates about, what I thought an opposing force might do. And today, we are clearly in a I don't personally would call it an end time scenario, but we're definitely in a spiritual type war where it's good versus evil, here on earth. And I do think that, from having paid very close attention to many pastors over the last few years, more than I ever did in my life, that I have learned things from the Bible that you go, oh my God, I did not know that, and that's exactly what's happening today. And so enter Pastor Steve, who's written some great books. This is one called President Trump's Pro-Christian Accomplishments, President Trump's Pro-Christian Accomplishments by Steve Cioccolanti. And this is another one, Trump's Unfinished business, Trump's unfinished business, 10 prophecies to save America. This is one I have gone through, and it's both of them are excellent. And where can they find those books? Is there a website?
Well, it's on Amazon, and believe it or not, for about 2-3 weeks, Amazon banned this one, and I don't understand why that's such a threat to them, but they literally banned that one, and we weren't sure if it's going to be put on. I fought it, I contested it, and finally it's just came back up on Amazon.
So in the previous segment, we were talking about the book of Revelations, chapter 6, I guess.
Chapter 6.
And we got into chapter 7 to talk about the red horse, I guess. And so what is that telling us about where we are now and where we might end up being here? Because it does feel like we are in a condensed period of history, meaning that things are happening at a much faster rate of change, a much faster pace, maybe because we just have so much information that bombards us. But I also feel like things can move faster. Airplanes travel around the world. People are moving and communicating with, like this, like in this type of medium. So the pace and the rate of change is much more dramatic. And, what is that? So how does that portend for the future? What does the book say?
Believe it or not, the exact words you use are in the Bible. It's in Daniel, I believe, chapter 11. It says, they will run to and fro and knowledge shall increase. So there will be international global travel and knowledge will increase at a pace like never seen in the past 5,000-6,000 years. Where we are at is very clear in my view. And again, it's a calling, General. It's a calling. People ask, how do I get into it? It's not like I just study harder because there are Bible schools out there everywhere and they're not teaching it. You can't just get it mentally. So it's a calling for me to come and warn the United States. Because we now know that Revelation 1, the first seal, has been broken, then we have a timeline for the second, third, and fourth seal, which is the red horse of war, the black horse, which is recession and famine. And that's not something that we look forward to, but that's coming.
What's it say about recession and famine? Because we're going to move into, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, I do believe that we're going to move into an uncontrollable period of economic change. And when I say uncontrollable, I've talked quite a bit over the last 4 years about the BRICS nations, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They have their summit coming up in October. Russia is the seat, the chair right now of that economic and military consortium. And there looks to be about another 25 nations that are going to join it. So the BRICS nations alone represent about 47% of the world's population. You add another 25 nations in there, you're looking at 80 to 90%. So that economic change is something that we may not be able to control, and it may move away from the petrodollar, right? The U.S. dollar is the currency of choice, backed by the sort of the petro world, the oil markets. And then the strength of the dollar on top of that, which has been that way since the 1970s. So I think that we're going to see that economic shift. So that's interesting that the book talks about that.
Yeah, the Bible wants us to know that Jesus is the Messiah and that he's coming back. And to prove it to you, the Bible says, if I tell you earthly things and you do not believe, how will you believe when I tell you heavenly things? So the idea is not to be just engrossed in all the politics of the world, because people say, well, what right do you have to be commenting on this? Well, I'm just reading the Bible because I'm trying to point people to the fact that there is no other book that is written by God that is about, the future and what's to come. So speaking to the global famine that's coming, according to this timeline in Revelation 6, it's not yet. So often people who are studying all this, they're a little bit ahead of time and they start to get into a panic. So a lot of people say the US dollar is going to collapse. And for the past 3 years, I said the US dollar is going to only increase. And you can see with the fall of the yen, actually that means the US dollar is stronger and stronger. The US dollar is not going to collapse immediately. The banking system is not going to collapse immediately, because if this timeline is correct, what we have is another 2.5 years of war. And war, unfortunately, historically has been very good for the economy in the United States. So they perpetuate that, but at some point the scales will tip.
So let's talk about the food famine, because some people like Bill Gates and and these other globalists, they want us to move to where that we're eating in a much different way. We're not eating the kinds of foods that we would normally, think would be, food that you would grow. We're eating manufactured things.
Very unnatural.
Yeah, I mean, and then we see, coincidental or whatever, however you want to look at it, we see a lot of, farming, chicken manufacturers, produce manufacturers, burning to the ground, farms being, literally, destroyed. The monopolization of farming communities into much, much bigger companies, that's been going on for a couple of decades. Will that lead to a famine of the types of foods that people are normally used to? Or how do you describe that? What would from a biblical perspective, how is that considered, I guess?
Yeah, so what you're describing there goes into then the fourth horse. That's that's even worse, what you're describing, where they're going to control what you eat, where you sleep, where you work. This spirit is purely satanic. Who was Satan? Satan was somebody who was proud, who wanted worship, and who wanted the angels to follow him instead of God. So anytime you see a spirit of someone who's very proud, they think they can rule over other people, they can tell you what you should put at the dinner table, they can tell you our human engineered food is better than the God-given natural food from a farm, you're looking at someone who's really satanic. That's how we say satanic. It's not just because you dress a certain way or you have rings in certain parts of your body. It's that heart of pride that I can force my will on other people. That's coming in the green horse. So if you will, I'll just read it to you what it says.
Please.
Because you got the third horse.
I think this is fascinating stuff, because when you talk about the book of Revelations, it's like, so revelation, right? Reveal. It means to reveal something.
Correct.
And to me, it's like, okay, so let's go back to where many, many people on this planet believe, which is in the idea of these faith-based values, and they all emanate from one real critical time on earth, which is when Jesus walked on earth, and then the Bible was then developed over time by those people that were living at that time, and then to reveal to us what the future might look like. That's, to me, that's the book of Revelations.
That's exactly it. So God's not trying to hide things. Remember, I grew up with a Buddhist, I know this sounds strange, but I grew up in a Buddhist Catholic home, Buddhist Catholic in Thailand. And the Tripitaka and other writings, they don't have any of these revelations. They simply don't. So this is a unique thing that we get to have. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, "Come," and I looked, and behold, a black horse. So what color is black? We have to think, what is it controlling the whole world that is black? It's probably petroleum. So these are the clues. How does that affect the price and the famine? Okay. And its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. So the scale is a symbol of the economy, by the way. When I was little, they actually literally would come with a scale. And if you sold something, they would weigh it. Like you could sell copper or paper, and they would weigh on the scale the value of it. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the middle of the four living creatures saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do no harm to the oil and the wine." Okay, so that's a little bit mysterious, because we don't use the denarius, we use a dollar. But why does God use the denarius? Because it's an objective measure of 1 day's wage. The worker back then, 2,000 years ago, for a day of farm work or shopkeeping work, he would be paid 1 denarius. So it's saying that a loaf of bread, the typical food for us in the West, a bowl of rice, let's say in the East, would cost an entire day's wage. So that's hyperinflation and famine. That will come after the war. So we've got Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, we've got all this to deal with for the next at least 2 years. And then we will have the famine. After the famine, what you're describing is the fourth seal, the fourth horse. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I look, and behold, a pale horse. In the Greek, it actually says green, or chloros. Its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, that's disease or epidemics, and with the wild beasts, that's probably microbes, animals of the earth. So why is that the fourth horse? Once you get into total control of farmland, food, how far you can drive this 15-minute city, you're killing people with the green new religion, right? The Green New Deal is the desire of the elites who think that they're better than the rest of us, that they can control even how far we travel on a given day, how much we should consume, what kind of protein we should consume. And they want to sell that protein to us, not give us the God-given stuff. So that's the fourth seal. God has given it to us in consecutive order in a sequence. So at any point you can falsify it. You could say, you know what, the Bible isn't true, I believe something else. The problem is this has been going on for 3,000 years, and the Bible's very specific about wars, specific about who are the players, and very specific about the time we're living in now.
So let me put you on the spot a little bit. So you described a white, a black, a red, a green horse, right? And interpretations of those revelations that each of those horses, portray. So why horses? What's the symbolic nature of the horse? We just saw in the Olympics. We just saw the Olympic opening ceremony. They used it looked like the horse of
the
death.
Devil knows. The devil knows. The devil is a counterfeiter, and so why the horse? Number one, for us, we're separated from the horse now, but for historically, the horse is the weapon of war. It's the carrier of the soldier. So number one, it's a war. Number two, a horse is a domesticated animal that is controlled by humans. So all of these events will be warlike, it will be anti-human, and it will be engineered by humans. Somebody is going to be steering it. So even though the white horse looks like it's just an accident, a virus escape, what the Bible is saying is he picked a horse, not a panda, not a lion, not something else. He picked a horse because a horse has a rider that steers it, and the horse allows that. So each of these will be human-engineered pandemic, human-engineered war. They're wanting the war.
So what are some of, if we had another couple of pastors in here,
Yes.
what are the other interpretations, or what are the arguments that you have had with others about the interpretations of these things? Because these are, to me, again, Book of Revelations, it's to reveal something to us. You look at these and you say, because I totally agree about the horse. The horse represents the, sort of the warrior spirit, especially, the strong horse on the battlefield. And when you go back to certainly biblical times, horses were deadly on any battlefield, especially if they were well led and well maneuvered, right? They were like the modern day tank. Like we would actually, when we moved from, in World War II, we moved from sort of the horse on the battlefield to the tanks. We started in World War I, but it really took on its own in World War II. And the modern day, on a modern battlefield, a horse is now representative of the tanks that you see on a battlefield, right? So there's a certain analogy there. But what are some of the other interpretations?
Well, I teach in Bible school, and I've been through Bible school 20 odd years ago, and they don't teach it. So that's a good thing. If they don't know it, they shouldn't teach it. So number one, they don't teach it. Number two, when I do talk to pastors, like I was in a room of 70 pastors in El Salvador, and I said, well, here's what I see. I don't assume I'm right. I'm not dogmatic. I'm not trying to force my belief on others. But I said, here's what it says. The white horse has a tux on, and he's given a what? And in Spanish, they literally read, not a crown, but corona. They're saying corona. I said, please say it again, corona.
Right.
And I said, well, and what was the name of the virus that locked down the whole world? And their jaws dropped because they haven't actually thought about it. So I haven't had any pastors say, no, that's not true. But what they will say is, but I don't believe.
So I'm going to put a stamp on that, because a lot of people still in these various audiences I think in the world of sort of conservative markets, for anybody that listens to this, this idea of COVID, right? COVID, coronavirus ID, identification, COVID, whatever the number is that they assign to it, right? COVID-15, COVID-19, COVID, whatever. It's corona. It means the highest level of viruses. The identification number is of, whatever that number is that's assigned to it. And I think that people need to understand that, because corona goes back to the Bible. And the idea of corona, and I've also seen some other things where some not just interpretations, but real, the comparisons where corona, when you're talking about like the devil, you're talking about evil, that actually in the numbering system, the 666, all this kind of stuff, and some people in the audience and whoever listens to this is going to think, oh, Flynn's off his rocker. No, I'm looking at these things and I'm just restating what I'm hearing from who I know are experts on the Bible. And that's why I think it's so important that we have Steve with us today, Pastor Steve with us today. We'll come into the next segment here in a second. And what I want to do is I'm just going to let you, use that amount of time to talk about where you think we're going as a nation, because we are in a period of time where I believe that good always prevails over evil in this long arc of history, but I just don't know about the time frame that good will prevail. I think that the time frame is not what we all believe, which most people will look at and go, oh, we've got 90 some odd days to an election. I don't necessarily believe that one election is going to save the day. I do believe that we have a period of sacrifice that we're going to go through. So after we come back from the break, I'm going to let Pastor Steve talk a little bit about his books and also where he thinks we're heading here in the future. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to talk about a limited time offer of subscriptions to Patriot.tv and how you can become a member of our Patriot Defenders subscription club and become a member of Patriot.tv. Really, it's America's network. I call it the home of truth. And you can do that for only $9.99 a month. It's a great deal by itself, but what I'm going to walk you through here in these next few seconds is a couple of package deals that we have that are unbelievable. The next membership was the annual membership at $99 that you can save right away. You save $20 if you come in at the annual subscription rate. The best deal that I think that people ought to seriously consider is the 2-year membership at $159. And it includes a special edition of my recently released documentary, Flynn, Deliver the Truth, Whatever the Cost. So along with the 2-year membership, the 2-year subscription will send you a DVD combo of the film, plus an option to stream the movie online, as well as exclusive interviews of Tucker Carlson, Devin Nunes, and myself. So go to the home of truth, right? Go to Patriot.tv today, sign up, seriously consider the 2-year subscription rate. It's an unbelievable savings. I think it's a total savings of about $70 from just signing up on a monthly or a annual basis. So thank you very much for your support. Patriot.tv is America's new network. Thank you.
The world is about to shift. Banks are going cashless globally with the emergence of central bank digital currency, which will bring with it programmable money and the ability to turn on or off your purchasing power based on your digital social profile. It's like the equivalent of spyware in your bank account. You need to get out of the system with the world's safest and most precious assets, silver and gold. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900.
Okay, folks, welcome back to Inside the SCIF with General Mike Flynn. My guest today is Pastor Steve Cioccolanti. Pastor Steve and I have known each other for a couple of years. We actually met through the Reawaken America tour that we have been a part of, and also been fascinated, getting to know Steve and his family, but also his view of where the world is at. He's written a couple of great books, and we'll highlight those books here in a second and where to find those. Trump's Unfinished Business, 10 Prophecies to Save America, and President Trump's Pro-Christian Accomplishments, which are many. But one of the things we've been talking about is the book of Revelations and Steve's description and actually reading from the book from chapter 6 through I think 8 or 9, and these various horses that are described in the book. And each horse represents, they're sort of a color, red, black, or white, black, red, and green, what they represent, and then the interpretations of what the words in the Bible say. One of the things that I have done, and I have always done this, I've used different ideas and different historical documents to try to understand some of the enemies that I have had to face in my time fighting enemies overseas, principally in places like Europe, places like the Middle East, Africa, Central Asia. And one of the places that I found myself going back to was the Bible, because I wanted to understand the historical context that how they were interpreted and how they might choose some biblical reference in order to develop a military plan that they are then going to execute against something that we are trying to defeat. So it's to me, warfare is, from my background, my training, my education, my experiences, warfare is at the foundation of the type of person that I am, because that's what I trained myself to be in terms of my area of expertise. So Steve, looking at it from the biblical perspective, what I wanted to do in this last segment is let him just talk a little bit here about where does he think, given what he's described, where does he think we're heading as a world and certainly as a nation here in the United States of America?
Well, we'll put it in the big perspective. First of all, how could our two individuals, General Flynn and Pastor Steve, be sitting here together when a year ago I was living in Australia and the Lord just said, come to be part of the Great Awakening here. And then the tour that you run is called the Reawaken America Tour. Mm-hmm. So I think what we have to keep in mind is God is watching over our lives. He's putting the right people together at the right time. But we have to listen to him. And it's more critical than ever that we're listening to his voice. One of the biggest problems from my perspective is President Trump has had very untrustworthy people around him. And that's why I think we are in the situation that we're in. And so we need to pray for him, and we need to pray that the right voices are around you. So that's true like from a national level, that's true even from a family level. That third voice, that wrong voice is the problem. We got to get a sharp, clear signal from the Lord. And the way we do that is we go back to the Bible. We need people who are just grounded in the word, not in opinion. Mm-hmm. And you asked a very good question, like, couldn't somebody just look at the white horse and call it something else? Well, during the break, I'm reminded, you know what? I've actually heard other things, but the reason that they're wrong is because the seals were not open. That's why it's actually called a seal. It means even if you're learned, even if you study a lot, you're not going to know what it is until it's revealed. Like, you're not going to know what a corona is. You can say it could be a European crown. You could guess it could be some other nation, but it just has no meaning. There's no way you would know that there's a virus called COVID-19 mm-hmm. that would affect the whole world until COVID-19 comes and affects the whole world. That's why it's sealed. But yes, you could say the white horse. Somebody a long time ago, I heard pastors say, oh, that's Jesus coming. But why would he come with a bow and a crown and he goes out conquering? He's already conquered death. What else is there for him to conquer? He's mm-hmm. conquered it all. Conquered sin and death. Then somebody else said, yeah, the white horse could be the Antichrist. But the problem with that is the timeline. Timeline is very important. It's like if you get the advice to buy a share or a stock, but you buy it at the wrong time, it can ruin you. Mm-hmm. So Revelation 6 is way before Revelation 13, which is when the Antichrist is revealed. So it's important to just keep track of what's going on. God is chronological. He's revealing it chronologically. So what's coming next is definitely there's going to be a war. We're on the winning side. Iran's not going to win over this, but there's going to be an Islamic alliance that will come out of this. Mm. Out of that, it will take us to many chapters further into Revelation, which will take us to Ezekiel 38. Ezekiel 38, if you're in the military and you want intelligence from another dimension, you need to study Ezekiel 38 and 39 very clearly. So we're heading to the war. It's not the end. Those who think, I hear right now, the way they're interpreting this is, Russia's going to invade Israel. Russia is not going to invade Israel. I think you and I have some similar beliefs about this, that this is just made up American theology because the seals were not broken and because for many years, Russia is always depicted in Hollywood as the enemy. But consider the fact that Russia is more pro-Christian than America is right now. They don't have Hollywood pumping out transgender and the breakdown of families daily. They don't have that. They're actually protecting the family. Mm-hmm. They're more anti-Islam than America is right now. And they've fought many, many wars on their with their smaller states of the former Soviet Union, and they were Muslim. So they're very well aware of this issue. So it's not at all in the Bible that Russia is going to invade Israel. That's something that needs to be corrected. Go back to the Bible. So when we go to Ezekiel 38 in the remaining time that we have, there's a lot of words and a lot of old words that needs to be interpreted. But we'll try to make some sense of it because this is the big one. And it comes after Ezekiel 37, which is the rebirth of Israel. So we know the timeline. The rebirth has to happen before. That's already happened. Then the capture of Jerusalem, that's happened. And then Donald Trump recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel was one of those main events that fulfilled Ezekiel 37. So 37 is done. We're now into 38. The word of the Lord came to me, that's Ezekiel. Son of man, set your face toward Gog. This is a mystery. People are debating, who's Gog? Of the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him and say, thus says the Lord, behold, I am against you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaw and bring you out, and all your army, horses, horsemen, all of them. So it's connected to the horses.
Again.
There it is. It's connected, those two. All of them clothed in full armor, a great host. Host means an army, a great army. All of them with buckler and shield, wielding swords. Now here are the nations. Persia. Persia is modern Iran. Cush and Put are with them. Cush is the old name for Sudan and Ethiopia. Today, Sudan is the Islamic country that's aligned with all of those other nations. Put is Libya. They're with them. So you got Iran, you got Sudan, you got Libya, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his cohorts, Beth Togarmah with all from the uttermost parts of the north. So it even tells you, if you don't know which direction this is north. All right, Iran is north, Syria is north, Turkey is north. After many days, you will be mustered. Right, in the latter years, you will go against the land that is restored from war, the land whose people were gathered from many peoples. Okay, what land, what country is gathered from many people? America is, Israel is. We're gonna have to skip a few of these. They're gonna come like clouds, so airplanes are involved in this. You're gonna come up, the Lord says, on that day, thoughts will come to your mind. You will devise an evil scheme and say, I will go up against the land of unwalled villages, and I will fall upon the quiet people who dwell securely, all of them dwelling without walls, having no bars and gates. So a lot of things in there, and it goes on the rest of the chapter, who wins, what happens.
So let me put it into my language, I think, because I think that for an audience too, because people can go in and read that, and I recommend reading Ezekiel 37 and 38, because as Pastor Steve's talking about here, these are war fighting principles. When you read those parts of the Bible, they're really talking about war fighting and the principles of war, the idea of objective and the idea of the concentration of the types of forces that you need to bring together, right? The laying out of the different nations, and all those nations are still in play today. I mean, Libya, Sudan, which at the time represented pretty much all of East Africa. Now you have, Ethiopia, you've got Somalia, so you got the Red Sea lined up there, of course, Iran, Persian Gulf. I mean, all the things that are sort of modern day pieces of geography that we all understand. When you're talking about, things from the north, I mean, today, in the last 24 hours, Russia came out and said that they are going to continue to be the main supplier of weapon systems to Iran, not because they believe in Iran as the type of nation that it is, which is really a radical Islamist state controlled by Khomeini and some very, very radical leaders. It's because there's an alliance that is starting to take place, a modern day alliance that the Bible, when you go back to what Pastor Steve just read about, this alliance that is starting to form again. And these alliances are biblical in nature. And if we don't pay attention to what the outcomes were at that time, now that time being in the, sort of the biblical times, then we will lose sight of the kinds of things that we must focus on. Now, we've got a couple minutes left. One of the things that you read there that, like events, like, sort of tectonic events, right? An awakening. We talked about, we're running these events called the Reawaken America Tour, a great awakening. the assassination attempt of President Trump, to me, the fact that he survived and miraculously survived, thank God, we'd be in a completely different place right now, consequentially, if the assassin had been successful. So, is that an awakening moment for the United States of America? Is, to me, if you look at it biblically, you look at it spiritually, and you say, okay, I'm a believer. God gave us one more chance. Is that, should I believe like that? So now I'm talking to you as a man talking to a man of faith, pastor. Should I look at that experience that the world just had and say, is there a message there that says, I'm giving you a chance, America, but you've got to now take this chance? What do you think about that? How do you interpret that?
Well, believe it or not, 4 months before it happened, on my YouTube channel, we delivered a prophecy that was very, very detailed about the fact that a bullet would pass by his right or graze his right ear, and he would be bleeding and he would fall down and he would get back up a changed man. So not only is it a sign from God, God predicted ahead of time so that we would not be asleep. So much of the population is just drunk on entertainment and drugs. And we need to be aware God is actively working in this nation to protect Donald Trump and to protect the people. But we have to go a step further. This nation cannot stay the same. The church cannot stay the same as what it's been doing. And, I was away from this country for nearly 25 years. And I came back and I was really surprised. I mean, I knew that there were changes. America had changed, but it's almost unrecognizable. And the fact that the church is not teaching prophecy, not sounding the alarm, even the name Trump itself is in the Bible. It says, at the last trump, literally spelled that way in the King James Version. At the last trump, the dead in Christ will rise, saying it's tying end-time prophetic events to a man named Trump. The solar eclipses. I was the first to talk about that in Asia and Australia. Here you had maybe just a handful of preachers talking about it. And when I came here, I just realized so many people don't want to hear. They want life to go on as they're used to. But life is not going to go on as you're used to. If Trump had been assassinated, my goodness, it would have affected all of our lives in an adverse way. So what I'm here to say is there are prophecies further than this, more than what the assassination attempt, that was predicted. There are prophecies that got downloaded to me, 10 prophecies to save America. And these things need to change. The church needs to lead the charge. The church needs to lead. The church has always led. The church doesn't take responsibility for that, but we've always led in these events.
So we have a couple minutes left. I mean, how do you define the church? Because I've had this argument with pastors for the last couple of years. I get upset at all these pastors because I don't think they teach pastors leadership all that much. I think they teach them how to run nonprofits more than they teach them how to actually be leaders of flocks, leaders of congregations. But how do you define the church when you say the church has to do something? What's the church? What's that mean?
Of course, there are many different ways you can say. And I'm not saying anyone with a building with the word church is the church. You have to believe Jesus and you have to teach the Bible. You have to at least do those two minimal things. And there are a lot of things that are not real churches to me. So I'm talking about the remnant believers that truly follow the Bible. Even those have gone into a soft message. They don't believe in prophecy. They don't believe that. They even believe the separation of church and state. Like you can say God should be relegated to a corner, except on Saturday or Sunday he can come back out. Well, that's wrong. That's wrong. And we also teach a very soft message about love and grace. And we need fighters now. We need people who fight for justice. And this is what God loves about Donald Trump. It's not that he's a perfect moral man, but he's an agent of justice. And he needs to be even more. That's why he's going through the lawfare that he's going through. So if he learns about justice and he would cry out to God using scriptures, he needs to quote, not just say God, but say Jesus. He needs to quote the Bible. When he does that, God will come and rescue America and help. But we need more people to say that. And we need advisors around him to say that. And they're probably saying, no, don't be too overtly Christian. Don't be too, no, the clock is way too late in the game. Yeah. We need to call out on the name of Jesus and actually call out on scriptures. When we quote scriptures, there's a lot of power that's released. That's how I believe Israel will be saved. That's how I believe America will be saved. It's not just through our own strength. At some point, we have to humble ourselves and say, we got a lot going for us, but we can't do it on our own anymore. We need Jesus and we need his word to help us when we call out that way. justice will be delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so and for me, and we're coming to a close here, folks. If you go back into the founding of the United States of America, the founding is based on principally Christian values. And we have lost sight of those. We have actually allowed ourselves, over the last probably certainly 50 years, if not 100, but certainly 50, to just sort of go into a moral tailspin, a moral decline. And I think that one of the things that I firmly believe is that we can recover from this. We recover by going back to those principles and values that that make America great, right? That make America what it is today. That shining city on the hill that Matthew talks about in the Bible. He actually describes a city on a hill, right? So Matthew, I forget, maybe Matthew 7, but don't hold me to that. But it's Matthew that talked about a city built on a hill that we are all in search of. So as we go forward, I think Trump is the right person at the right time, and we are blessed that the good Lord decided not to allow him to be taken from us right now for this moment in history. So, Pastor, I really appreciate it. Again, where can they find you? The Trump's Unfinished Business and President Trump's Pro-Christian Accomplishments.
Yeah, those two books and more are on Amazon.com, but you can also find us at discoverchurch.online. You can go to YouTube, as long as they don't censor us. You can find us, YouTube, at Discover Ministries. My name is hard to spell out, so Discover Ministries is probably easier to look up. But yeah, Amazon has banned one of those books, and it just was re-released.
Tells you all you need to know. So go out and get it, folks. Thank you so much, Steve, Pastor Steve, for being with us. You got a great family. God bless everybody. See you next week in the SCIF with General Mike Flynn. Thanks.
General Michael Flynn's military career included a key role in shaping U.S. counterterrorism strategy and dismantling insurgent networks in the Afghanistan and Iraq wars. He was given numerous combat arms, conventional, and special operations senior intelligence assignments. He became the 18th director of the Defense Intelligence Agency in July 2012. And he was the 24th U.S. National Security Advisor for the Trump administration. You want intelligence? This guy's got it in spades. This is Inside the SCIF with General Michael Flynn.